Thank you for listening to West Indies on 99.94. I'm your host, Mashal St. Patrick Hewitt from the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. And with me as ever is my partner in crime, Santoki Nagulendran. On today's show, we're going to be chatting about the construction of the West Indies T20 World Cup squad. We've got less than 2 months to go, and it's time for us to decide who should or shouldn't go to the World Cup. Santoki, take it away.
Yeah, well, Mash, you know what they say, with every destruction comes a construction or reconstruction in West Indies' case. The great dynasty is finished. The great dynasty has fallen. We're rebuilding now. So we're here to look. Obviously, West Indies have lost their last two series to New Zealand and India, respectively, in the T20 arena. So with a lot of players unavailable and a World Cup coming on, there's a lot of things going on with the T20 side. And yeah, we're here to just basically analyse who should be the men going on the plane to Australia and maybe who could stake a claim in the upcoming CPL. So we're going to deep dive into what we think should be the final 15-man squad to go to Australia and fight, not win, not take the title, but at least put up a fighting chance in Australia in October. So Mash, I guess it's only logical to start with the openers for the side.
Most definitely. And let me just put a disclaimer out there first and foremost, people. All we want from the West Indies now is to just get through qualifying. Forget what happens in the May tournament. This is the squad to just get out of the qualifying stages for the World Cup. And if you disagree with us or agree, you know where to get at us. But yes, Santoki, as you said, the opener. So at current in the selected squads for essentially the last three series, so Bangladesh, India, and the soon-to-be completed New Zealand series, we've had three main openers: Brandon King, Sharmarh Brooks, and Kyle Mayers. I mean, where do you want to... do you know what? This is how we're going to do it, Santoki. I'm just going to go through each player, and because some of them are more straightforward than others. Kyle Mayers, Santoki, yes or no to the World Cup?
Yes, 100%. We've analysed, like we've seen, and statistically, he's had the highest strike rate for the power play in international cricket this year. Settled off well, has done his best to try and replicate what Evan Lewis contributed to the side. So for me, Kyle Mayers is a definite yes. And
just to clarify, people, if you think we're just doing this off the top of our head, here is our West Indies, our 99.94 World Cup squad paper. Desmond Haynes, if you want to come to us to get some help with your selection, we have the pad right here. But yeah, Kyle Mayers, that's a no-brainer. I think you're right there, Santoki. He definitely gets on the plane to Australia. Brandon King.
So Brandon King's an interesting one because it's not as if he's been shoehorned into the side because we've lost Lendl Simmons, Evan Lewis. He was kind of in the mix 2019, 2020, lost his way, has come back in, works well with Mayers. For me, I think Brandon King's not at the elite level you'd want as an opener at a World Cup stage, but we don't have any better options at the moment. He works well with Mayers. He has shown potential to hit some big innings, but he's just not consistent enough for me to say, yeah, if we go to the World Cup with Brandon King, he's going to hit runs in Australia.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think he has to go because of his partnership with Mayers. They have, if we listen to Nicholas Pooran, and Pooran's always talking about it's a young team and we're building and so on and so forth. Well, in that case, King and Mayers kind of are part of that rhetoric in terms of building towards something. I think I said on one of our recent podcasts that when you look at the raw numbers, they're the third highest in terms of opening partnerships in West Indies internationals in T20. So I think King goes. Also because of the lack of options, but I think King goes. I don't think he's done enough to deserve to be dropped. Sharmarh Brooks.
Someone needs to explain the logic to me. How did we end up with Sharmarh Brooks as our backup opener? I'd understand maybe if you put him in as like a middle order squad player, maybe to go in because he's shown some white ball credentials in ODIs. But for me, it's a big concern to have Sharmarh Brooks as your backup opener. If Mayers or King gets injured and we open with Sharmarh Brooks, Zimbabwe are going to destroy us. So for me, again, similar to King, but on a more extreme level, it's just a case of we don't have anyone else. It'd be interesting to get your opinion, man. Spice Man, Andre Fletcher. So obviously he'd been playing as an opener. a lot of people have forgotten him, but he played against Pakistan last year. And then in the Bangladesh Premier League, I think in February, he hit a century. And the Bangladesh Premier League is a respected T20 league. It's not like the Nepalese league or anything. He hit a century in that, and I think he hit 80 in his next game. So he was in form. It's just strange that considering how many players were given opportunities to, Spiceman, who's kind of been in the reckoning for the West Indies T20 side for the last 5-6 years, hasn't been given a call-up or anything.
Yeah, I've 100%. So to clarify, Santoki, Brooks doesn't go to World Cup for me. He's out. I don't think there isn't, for me, somebody can undoubtedly message us and say, oh, but what about these numbers? I don't think Brooks goes. And it's not that, in fairness to him, Santoki, if you look over some of his most recent innings, he's made, I don't want to say he's made runs, but he'll do like a 20 off 19 or most recently a 42 or 44, but he can't go to the World Cup and certainly not as an opener. So I don't have him there. You've mentioned Spiceman, and I'm perplexed, Santoki. When our GOAT dynasty stepped down, somehow Fletcher was included in part of that group of. Did he even get a game at the World Cup? I don't even think he got a game.
No.
But somehow he was included as part of that group of players who, well, that's it now for them. But Spiceman's only 34, and he's just got the big bag for I think the UAE League. I think he's part of the. Is it that MI team, the MI Emirates team? I think he's just got the big bag for the UAE League. So my thing is, if a player is still getting the big bag around the world for T20 leagues, we can't discount their viability for the West Indies. But I'm going to give you 4 names, Santoki, to fill Brooks' position. And you just tell me which one you'd take. Spiceman. Obviously, I'm giving you Evan Lewis, but I mean, Evan Lewis, Chanderpaul Hemraj, who's been making runs in minor league cricket, Johnson Charles. There's the 4 that I think you could possibly take. I want to say Rakeem Cornwall, but I've got him later down in my list. Would you take, which of those 4 would you take if given an opportunity?
Well, you bite this his hand off to take Evan Lewis, but obviously, like you said, there's external factors. So if I'm looking at the other 3, I think Hemraj isn't proven at international level. You can't just drop him in for a World Cup. Johnson Charles has had his day. I don't think he's at the level. So I would go with Spiceman. I think Spiceman would be a reliable backup, more reliable than Sharmarh Brooks to come in as opener should King or Mayers be injured or rotated.
Yeah, I mean, I've got Spiceman in, and I think also the thing with Spiceman, he's also played in the Big Bash. I mean, people say without great success, he took a couple of superb catches. I think it was in Melbourne Stars. I think he played for superb catches a couple of seasons back. But the other thing I like about Spiceman is, and particularly it's in Australia, so his weakness to spin might not come in Australia per se. But Spiceman isn't going to wait around playing a match losing inning. He's just going to get out. It's get off or get out, and that's why I can't have Brooks in my team. You have to get off or get out in T20s. Okay, so that's that. Moving to the engine room, Santoki. So I've got Nicholas Pooran, Shimron Hetmyer, Rovman Powell, and this I've got to include Devon Thomas because, well, he's been batted in. He's been battered in the engine room, so I've got to include him. That's the engine room, Santoki. This one should be a bit more straightforward. Pooran and Hetmyer to the World Cup.
Yeah, 100%. We saw Hetmyer essentially score half of the runs in one innings against New Zealand, and he's just come back into the side, so you'd expect him to develop. And, Pooran captain, he's going to be leading the engine room, coming in at number 3, I think, in the World Cup, playing that role of kind of what Sharmarh Brooks has been doing as opener, but it's not really what you want from your opener, but kind of like soaking up the balls, building around the team, making sure we get to a substantial total. So for me, those are 2 essentials. And those are the 2 players who, if we are going to make progress in the tournament, you'd be looking at to kind of lead the way.
Rovman Powell, well, he's vice captain. He's going?
Yeah, Rovman Powell, definitely. I think he's, considering how well he played against England earlier in the year and how this year's been, he's kind of been disappointing in the series against New Zealand and India. But I think, as you said, he's vice captain, got experience. We know he's got the ability to play blistering innings when on form. So for me, Rovman Powell. What are you saying, Rovman Powell?
Yeah, I'm saying Rovman, but I noted that before the second T20 versus New Zealand. I can't remember who was interviewing. It might be in Badri. And Powell said that him and the think tank behind the scenes are wondering whether he should move back to 4 and stop playing as a finisher in this side. So his success that he spoke about that he had versus England was when he was coming in at number 4 after Pooran. So and Powell was saying how they're wondering if he should go back up the order to bring some needed what word did he use? Intent into the innings early doors. So I guess he would split Pooran and Hetmyer in that sense. So Powell's going for me. It's just the question for me is where are we playing Rovman Powell in this side? Because the failures he's been having, or failures is harsh, but he's not hit the heights versus India and New Zealand. And maybe that's because the finisher role isn't where he should be playing for West Indies. But he goes. Devon Thomas, Santoki.
It's a tricky one because, again, similar to Sharmarh Brooks, he's here because of a lack of options. I think he's played to the best of his ability, but again, I just don't think at World Cup he's someone who you can kind of count on to play. Maybe as a squad player, wouldn't have any issues with him coming in, but he's definitely not making my first 11.
So I've got Devon Thomas out. I don't have him going to the World Cup. And the reason why I don't have him going to the World Cup, I think the only... Okay, here's why I don't have him going to the World Cup. If we select Fletcher, Fletcher becomes the backup keeper. Or, if you want, he becomes the keeper. I think Devon is only in the side now because he's currently keeping, because they obviously clearly don't want Pooran to wicket keep. The question mark for me, Santoki, is I think we have to make Pooran wicket keep, because if Pooran wicket keeps, whether people say, but that then takes away from his focus on his batting and so on and so forth, Pooran wicket keeping opens up more options to select within the side than selecting someone to be an out-and-out wicket-keeper in the sense of Thomas, who can then float up and down the order, so on and so forth. So I personally think you have Pooran wicket-keep, or Fletcher, if we call Fletcher back, which then means we can select someone into the engine room. And there's a name I want to throw to you, Santoki, similar to the Evan Lewis name. Should Sherfane Rutherford have another good CPL with St. Kitts, does he get into the World Cup squad?
Yeah, 100%. I think Sherfane Rutherford, if he has a good CPL season, I think you'd put him in just because he's someone who can float up and down the order, 3, 4, 5 when needed. And that's sort of the versatility you need from players. He's someone who's grown up in the modern era of T20 cricket, I should say. So he's got that versatility, and I think you'd be a fool not to have him in if he's willing to, pass the fitness test and has a good CPL. I'd rather have him in the side than a few other players who are currently there.
The only other options I've got, if we don't go with Rutherford, is we have 2 right-handers, because Thomas, we have to also consider that Pooran and Hetmyer are left-handers. Powell would be the only right-hander in the quote-unquote engine room. Devon Thomas obviously is a right-hander. There's another option, Santoki, which is that we replace Devon Thomas with Roston Chase, which then allows Roston Chase to become our off-spinner, which we're lacking in the squad, and you just have Roston Chase move up, down the order, dependent on what the match situation is, and that then allows you to deal with the fact that we don't have an off spinner. What do you think about that idea?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I think Roston Chase is people have kind of said, he's not suited for the T20 level, but we're forgetting what an excellent CPL he had with the bat and the ball. And I think so he's someone who could definitely come in. And as you said, he's got the versatility of being an off spinner as well, a pretty good one as well. So I think he would prosper in that role. I just think the only problem is if you've got Pooran as wicketkeeper, you'd have to move him down the order. I don't think you can bat at 3 after having kept wicket for 20 overs, as well as being a captain. Be interesting. He's obviously said he doesn't 100% have to be a wicketkeeper because they've obviously allowed him to just be a batsman. So there's obviously a reason for it. Maybe it affects his captaincy, or maybe, I don't know if the physical aspect will play a part with Pooran because he seems like someone who's young and, pretty fit. But I think maybe being wicketkeeper affects his captaincy while he's on the field. So I think for me, it'd be a lot of pressure to have a captain batting at 3 and a wicketkeeper in the side. It becomes too top heavy. You're placing a lot of responsibility on one man who's not even, like, he's young and coming into the role of captain. So for me, I can see that's why they've given it wicket-keeping to an experienced hand, Devon Thomas, but then it limits your ability to kind of be fluid with the squad, which is the conundrum that the coach is going to have.
People, again, remember you can get at us at Carib Cricket, Twitter, Instagram. caribcricket@gmail.com if you agree with these ideas. So we're saying Rutherford or Chase to replace Devon Thomas, possibly. But obviously the conundrum of wicket keeping there. To the all-rounders, Santoki, there are currently 5 all-rounders in this squad. I think that's too many. So my question to you when I give you these all-rounders are, who are we dropping out? Dominic Drakes.
Yeah, drop for Dominic Drakes. I think, don't get me wrong, he's a talented player. I think this World Cup's just come a bit too early for him. He hasn't got the game time you'd need in the build-up to World Cup, and I think he hasn't got that experience yet compared to the other 4 all-rounders in your list.
Interesting. I think the more I've seen Dominic Drakes, the more I feel that he's bowling better. Whether he can have the explosive impact at the back end with the bat. Obviously, we saw what he did in the CPL final, but I feel with Dominic Drakes, that's a 1 in 10 thing that happens as opposed to a regular thing or more regular thing like a Dean Smith or a Romario Shepherd. So I'm inclined to agree with you that possibly it's a little too early, and if we have to lose an all-rounder, he's the most likely one to drop out, but that's not for want of him trying. So I'll remove Dominic Drakes. Keemo Paul.
Whew. It's a tricky one, because he's someone who's an elite player, has played at a level, but the injury problems have set him back, and I don't know if there's enough time for him to regain the form we've seen of yesteryear from Keemo Paul. Again, with similar to Dominic Drakes at the moment, we're seeing flashes, like a 1 in 6, 1 in 7 games we see him perform well, but I don't know if he has the consistency for me to say, yeah, you're going to a World Cup. Again, I think if the World Cup was in a year's time and Keemo Paul had a year of being injury-free and playing regular cricket, he'd be in it, but I wouldn't take Keemo Paul, no.
Yeah, I'm not taking him either. I think he hasn't shown enough since being recalled to mean that you can bank on him performing in the clutch. He might do. He could do. But I just don't... If we're going based on performance, he hasn't shown enough. Now, if Keemo Paul goes into CPL... I think he's back with the Amazon Warriors, isn't he? He's with Amazon Warriors this year.
Yeah.
If he goes to CPL and has a fantastic season with Amazon Warriors and Amazon Warriors pick up their first ever CPL title, maybe that changes the argument. But if we're basing it purely on performances for the West Indies since being recalled to the squad, I don't think you can take him. I don't think he's shown enough consistency, certainly with the ball, and that's his primary suit, with the ball. We would want someone like Keemo Paul to be a death bowler. He ain't shown that he can do that, and we're sorely lacking in the... Sorry, actually, Santoki, let me just state, that's the only reason I think Keemo might get him, because we're so lacking in death bowling that if he was to go to CPL and suddenly show for Amazon Warriors, wait a minute, my death bowling's back on form, then I think they might gamble. But right now, I don't think he deserves it based on what he's shown.
Yeah, 100% agree.
Dean Smith.
Yeah, Dean Smith's got to go. I mean, with the ball, you never know what you're going to get, but he's that explosive finisher, and obviously they put faith in him. He's been playing pretty much every game in that role for West Indies. So yeah, Dean Smith's on the plane for me. Yeah,
no disagreements there. I think bouncy tracks in Australia, hard lengths, he's got to go. And obviously, we know what he can do with the bat. Romario Shepherd.
He's basically, I know Odean Smith is wayward, but Romario Shepherd's just pure chaos. But I think, like you said, like we said, he's been playing for West Indies. They've obviously got faith in him. Don't get me wrong, he has performed in a few games with the ball, and he's got that explosive ability with the bat. So I think for me, Odean and Romario will go together and be our finishers. Yeah,
I've as much as I cuss, I've got Romario going as well. Whether he plays every game or not, I don't know. But I've got him in the squad. I think the potential of what Romario can offer trumps what you think Drakes and Paul can offer. On a good day, Romario Shepherd will win you a game. Basically, it is what I'm saying. Similar with Dean Smith. So I think they have to go.
I think
Jason Holden. If
you're in a situation where you need 50 off the last 3 overs, I think Romario is the type of guy, as erratic as he is, he could pull it off. Whereas I don't think Drakes or Paul would be able to reach that level of explosiveness with the bat. So I think Romario goes.
Jason Holden, no brainer.
Yeah, no brainer. Jason Holden. It'd be interesting to see where they play him, because they've obviously tried him higher up the order. So he's opened at one point. He's batted at number 3. So they're obviously experimenting about kind of where he can bat. And it obviously looks like they don't have, as with most T20 sides, they're not going into the World Cup with a set batting lineup in that sense, as in they're trying out players in different roles depending on the situation. So, yeah, I think Holder, he's shown that versatility and, yeah, no-brainer, ball and bat, he's going.
Yeah, I'm with you. Obviously, he's going, it's Jason Holder. I think his form since coming back from his rest and bout of COVID hasn't been good. I think they're probably secretly worried about where best to bowl Jason. So never mind even with the bat, where best to bowl Jason. I think in the last game versus New Zealand, they hid him from the death overs because he's been going for licks. So it's about, at the moment, the worry is where do we actually get Jason Holder's 4 overs done without him going for licks? But that he's obviously going. Now, the thing is, Santoki, if we take out 2 all-rounders, that actually leaves a spot in a squad of 15. So I'm going to give you 2 names. So I'm going to give you 1 name, actually. A name to replace Drakes and Paul. Would you put this person in, if fit and available? Fabian Allen.
Yeah, 100%. If Fabian Allen's available, he's a player who you'd put as being one of the guys who can win a game for you, like single-handedly, with his performances with the bat and the ball. So for me, if Fabian Allen's in the side, it's a massive boost. Similar, I'd put it as equally important to Evan Lewis being back if we can get Fabian Allen back.
Right, so people keeping track at home, we have Drakes and Paul out, an available Fabian Allen, who's now with the Jamaica Talawars for CPL. He would come in to fill that. Obviously, he'd be a spinning all-rounder, but an all-rounder all the same. So we have him coming in instead. The spinners, Santoki. Now, with our squad, there's people, I'll give you our official West Indies on 99.94 squad at the end. But with our squads, we currently have Roston Chase in instead of Devon Thomas, Fabian Allen in instead of a combination of Drakes or Paul. So that's actually 2 of the spin positions done. But the current incumbent spinners, are we taking them? Akil Hussain?
Yeah, I think Akil Hussain's our premier spinner. Also, equally as important, he can perform with the bat as well. So I think they'll take it with that. I don't know how effective he'll be on the Australian pitches, the majority of them, but obviously as we need one full-time spinner, he'll be the premier guy to go.
Yep, a no-brainer. I think Akil Hussain's one of the few players in the squad who is guaranteed to go to World Cup. He could get licks. In fact, there's no more licks. He could get licks through the whole of CPL and he's still going to the World Cup.
Yeah.
Hayden Walsh Jr.
No, I think Hayden Walsh has been too erratic with the ball, just lacking control, and you wouldn't take him to World Cup, especially where spin's not going to be the order of the day. So for me, Hayden Walsh doesn't make the side.
Here's the problem, though, Santoki. I'm actually inclined to agree with you, but he's a leg spinner. And we know that in T20s, good T20 sides have a wicket-taking leg spinner. Are you saying that Hayden is so erratic that you'd rather just take no leg spinner?
Yeah, basically, for me, yeah, imagine you take Hayden Walsh now, he goes 4 overs for 50 runs, but you're saying we have to have a leg spinner in the side. It don't make no sense. So I think you got to work with what you got. There's no point trying to force it, the motive of having a leg spinner just for the sake of it. For me, I think Hayden Walsh has just lost his way and he's not going to regain it in time for the World Cup. But obviously, like you said, Mash, tactically, having a leg spinner is important for sides. But I just think, what is the point of just having one for the sake of it?
I'm actually gonna agree with you. Hayden Walsh doesn't go. I think Hayden Walsh doesn't go to the World Cup. That then means our squad goes back down to 14 possibly, which means that creates a space. I'm not going to fill his space yet. I'm going to leave that to the end because it depends on what you say for the next 2 players. Fast bowlers. Alzari Joseph.
Yeah, Alzari Joseph goes for me. I think he's been inconsistent, but we've seen glimpses and he's performed well in the IPL, I think. And as with a lot of players, we just don't have the alternative options to kind of step in. So for me, Joseph goes based on that.
Yeah, I think I've got Joseph in mine. People forget that the 3 games versus India, he hasn't featured versus New Zealand yet. The 3 games versus India, that's it. That's that's the sum of his international experience in T20s for West Indies. So with Alzari, we have to base it off what he's done in domestic franchise tournaments, and those performances are enough to suggest go into Australia where you're going to need a quick, it's got to be Alzarri. I don't think, whilst there's some question marks about some of what he's done versus India, he hasn't done enough for us to not gamble on Alzarri going to Australia. So I've got him in. Obed McCoy's a no-brainer.
Yeah, well, Obed McCoy is probably our most important player, just because whereas other positions, the batsman, you've got support around him. Obed McCoy is essentially single-handedly taking wickets. If he's not taking wickets, we struggle. So for me, Obed McCoy is a clinical person in that T20 side. And yeah.
So Santoki, what I've got then, having declared that Obed McCoy is a no-brainer, and I'm with you, I think Akil Hussain and Obed McCoy are the two most and Pooran are the three most guaranteed players to go to the World Cup. So Santoki, check this out. And everyone who's listening, get out your pen and your paper, and I'm going to go slowly. This is the official West Indies on 99.94 DM World Cup squad for the qualifiers in Australia. Brandon King, Spiceman, Kyle Mayers, Nicholas Pooran, Shimron Hetmyer, Rovman Powell, Roston Chase, Fabian Allen, Odean Smith, Romario Shepherd, Jason Holder, Akil Hussain, Alzarri Joseph, Obed McCoy. However, Santoki, that's only 14 names. The World Cup squad will be 15 players. If we have taken out Hayden Walsh Jr., it leaves one space for either a spinner or a fast bowler. I'm giving you 4 names. Sorry, I'm giving you 5 names, Santoki. Who would you pick and why for the final space? Bear in mind, though, we already have 3 spinners in the squad. So Roston, Fabian, Akil. Here's the 5 names that I've got that could possibly be the last person. Sunil Narayan.
I log off, man.
I'll just write it out there. Sunil Narayan, Gudakesh Moti, Kesrick Williams, Jaden Seals, Sheldon Cottrell. Who'd you take as your final person?
If all of them were fit, I'd go with Cottrell, just because he's got that experience. I think Cottrell's got injury issues, so I don't think he's going to go. Obviously, Sunil, it's up in the air. The selectors have said he hasn't made any contact with West Indies. You'd imagine he's not going to go. I think Keswick Williams has been out of elite cricket for too long for him to suddenly be in the side. Who else would that leave? Jaden Seals and...
Gudakesh Moti.
It's a tough one, because I think I could see either of them going, but I think they'll go Jaden Seals, just as that backup seam option, especially our ability for the likes of Joseph to underperform in T20s means if it's not going well for 2 games, you bring in Seals as the alternative option. And he's definitely got, I think he's very young, so that's why he's inconsistent, but he's got the talent when needed to kind of step up. So I think they'll go with Seals.
So if fit and available, I've got Sheldon Cottrell. If he's fit and he's back in time, I think for his ability to get wickets in the power play, which we can't do, and I think Sheldon and Obed would be very helpful. So I've got Sheldon. I think your argument is correct. If we're assuming that Sunil isn't going to be available, then because you've already got 3 spinners, you take Jaden Seals just as backup. However, there's one name missing. And in our last episode, you said you think he's going to go. Where does Andre Russell fit in all this?
Whew. I think Andre Russell's the type of player, if he is available, you make space for him. So it'd be interesting to see where they go. I could see Shepherd getting a drop, if
that's what I was, yeah.
I think Shepherd
I was about to say to you.
So, boy, Guyana would riot, but I think that's the only way you can go. It's because you have to go for like. You can't drop a spinner for him, or you can't drop a specialist batsman. You'd have to go for all-rounders. And as we said, if you're looking at that all-rounder list, Shepherd is the most inconsistent. So he's the one most likely for a drop. So for me, when Russell does, because I still think despite what's happened on social media, I think something will be worked out. I think Shepherd will hold the drop. But, with West Indies cricket, man, you never know what's going to happen. We could see O'Shane Thomas back in the firing line in Australia.
I forgot about him,
The thing is, though, obviously O'Shane's had his fitness and discipline issues and things like that. He would be the most lethal bowler if performing at his level in Australia. just because of the pace he can generate. It's a shame we don't see him, but you never know. Like, one good CPL could see him back in the squad. Obviously, the Cricket West Indies seem to be high on Kevin Sinclair at the moment. They picked him for the ODI squad. He could come into consideration if he has a good CPL. You never know with West Indies cricket. So anything could happen. Watch this space. But I think the squad we've named, taking out the likes of Fabian Allen, Evan Lewis, Andre Russell, because you don't know if they're available, if they will be available for the World Cup. I think generally that will be a realistic squad that we take to Australia.
So, ladies and gents, one last time with good feeling. The official squad that we are endorsing, Desmond Haynes, make sure you're listening. Phil, Uncle Phil, make sure you're listening. The official squad that we are endorsing to go to the World Cup. Brandon King, Spiceman, Carl Mayers, Nicholas Pooran, Shimron Hetmyer, Rovman Powell, Roston Chase, Fabian Allen, Aldine Smith, Romario Shepherd, but if Dre plays, Shepherd is out. Jason Holder, Akil Hussain, Alzari Joseph, Obed McCoy, Sheldon Cottrell if fit, if not, Jaden Seals, and I guess we're saying O'Shane Thomas if he finds form as the backup seamer. Ladies and gents, get at us. At Carib Cricket, Twitter, Instagram, caribcricket@gmail.com on email if you are furious with our World Cup squad. Santoki, that's goodbye from me. Is it goodbye from you?
Yeah, that's goodbye from me. And, you know, as the famous West Indian saying goes, it's only licks when we touch down. But as Mashella's famously said this year, who is the licks going to be for? Watch this space, guys. And, yeah, we'll look forward to seeing you on our next episode of West Indies on 99.94 DM.
Stay locked, people.